Good morning, everybody. We are back with another episode of the Rad Life, and this time around, I want to bring on board somebody who is a friend, a client, and very much involved in the education system in South Orange County. He is the founder of OCASA, which is a charter school here in Capstone Unified School District. Kapil Mathur is, like I said, is a friend. He's also a client. I remodeled his house last year, the new house that they bought in Laguna Niguel. But I really want to hear from him about how's it's been from the academics and the educational side for the adjustment, the pivoting that was needed, as all parents that are listening to this will know from personal experience. And I've heard from a lot of people. There's been struggles, there have been challenges, there have been some pleasant surprises. So without further ado, I am going to bring Kapil on, and I want to have him share with us what it's been like for him as an educator, as a school owner, as well as a parent himself. Kapil, are you there?
I am. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm waking up, but I'm good. I was just sharing before that the interesting position that you sit in is that you are basically able to reflect back on this last week or so on the pivoting that needed to be done in your particular case, maybe just in the overall sphere of schools and education in South County or beyond, because I know you're involved also in the charter side of things with a bigger network. So you guys have probably been talking about a lot of this stuff, but you also have the ability to share from that educator position, business owner or school owner position, and then also as a parent yourself, what it's been like to basically make this adjustment. So let's start off with just giving some people a little bit of background on the school and, how long it's been around, what it's been like setting it up. Give us a little history on OCASA.
Absolutely. So the Orange County Academy of Sciences and Arts is a public charter school. We currently have one school in operation that's kindergarten through 8th grade. Next year, we're opening our second school, which it'll initially run from 6th grade to 9th grade, but then we'll add a year each school year. That'll eventually be up from 6th through 12th grade. So the school was founded in 2016. That was when we first opened. It was put together by a group of local parents who wanted a different kind of education for their kids. So we had a group of about 10 or 15 families who spent a year researching and working on gathering community support. I wrote the charter petition, and that basically the charter petition is basically the strategic plan for the school. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to be structured? We opened a 501c3 nonprofit to operate the school. And then we submitted our petition and documents to the Capstone Unified School District. We had a tremendous amount of community support. They held a couple of board meetings where our charter petition was on the agenda. And then at the time, there was a 60-day clock that the school district has to make a decision in 60 days. And the Capo board wasn't able to get support to either approve or deny. So basically that 60-day clock ran out, and we resubmitted our petition to the Orange County Department of Education. And then that took another 60 days, and we received a 5-0 unanimous approval with no conditions at the county. We were the first school to do that. That was spring of 2016. Our first day was August 15, 2016. And we have been pretty much full the entire time.
So let me just stop you for a second. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, let me just share that I remember those days. I mean, you were living in San Clemente. I remember those days very much. I think the environment in which the public, there was sort of a tension, if you will, between like sort of the idea of charter schools and, how it was basically maybe challenging the doctrine of traditional schooling. You and I have said this a long time, and you're one of the first. You're always first to remind people that we are very fortunate that we have a lot of blue ribbon schools in South County, and we have a
Absolutely.
lot of strong academic, dedicated teachers that are in all the schools. But I want to just take a minute. When you kind of said in passing that the group of people that were involved in putting the charter together and doing the due diligence, and I know you well enough. I mean, when you say you guys did some due diligence, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm not surprised that there were no corrections from the Orange County school board. You're pretty thorough, my friend. But the thing I want to just expand on, what was this different kind of education that the parents and you basically wanted to develop or offer as an alternative or as another option out there? Can you expand on that a little bit for people?
Yeah. So, the federal government really doesn't, they don't have direct say in how schools are run, but they do have, they do set priorities. And so, probably about a decade or so ago, the federal government shifted their priorities, and they said that they passed something called the No Child Left Behind Act. And basically what that did was it made standardized testing and it made performance in math and language arts essentially the only things that schools were evaluated on. And so you saw this shift nationwide in education where whereas the emphasis maybe before was building well-rounded students and having them have lots of different kinds of experiences, it really shifted to how do we move the needle for the kids that are underperforming in math and underperforming in language arts? How do we get them at least to the standard? And it's a good goal, and obviously we want all of the kids to be at standard or above standard. But education doesn't work that way. You can't just spend all of your time working on math or working on language arts, or a disproportionate amount of time on that. Right. And you can't spend the time doing lectures and worksheets. And that's what a lot of the public schools around the nation, that's a lot of what they did. Down here in South Orange County, fortunately, Capistrano Unified School District is a very rich school district and it has lots of different programs and lots of different initiatives. Right. So parents will be, are lucky. They can go to any of the local schools and they've got wonderfully dedicated administrators and teachers. Right. What we were looking for, so the group of parents that got together, about half of them came from my daughter's preschool and another half came from people who I knew in San Clemente. And the thing that this group was looking for was we were looking for more hands-on type of activities, and really what we were looking for is more personalization to our individual student. So
which is smaller, which is a smaller school, a boutique approach gives you the ability to provide that attention, maybe a little bit more than a larger institution that's doing its best to basically bring everybody up to at least a minimum level. And to your point, the district we are in actually has a lot of ancillary programs to support other interests and try to develop more rounded students. But yeah, I mean, we forget that in a lot of cases also finance driven, resources driven, all this other stuff that basically, the academic system is trying to make sure that at least everybody has a minimum. But in the course of doing that, we tend to also sort of level things, and in many cases, people that have exceptional potential maybe get lost in the shuffle. And I think that's what people sometimes forget. I mean, you and I went to a school system that was probably more rounded, even if it was public. And if we
Right.
happen to be exposed to multiple types of school systems, we along the way, picked up on certain strengths, and not everybody has a sports strength. So, the way the system is geared right now is, other than the standardized testing and sort of everybody reaching to a certain level, a minimum, the only program that's really supported a lot is the sports program, which I'm not knocking it, but it's not everybody's bread and butter. I mean, it's not everybody's thing, right? So what happens to the sciences? What happens to the arts? What happens to the music? And then that's where the competing programs are now all dipping to the same, they're all fighting for the same resources. So in your case, or excuse me, in schools of your nature, it's a little bit maybe more agility to provide that in a more one-on-one customized basis, or smaller classroom environment, right?
Yeah, I think really the you hit the nail on the head when you talk about charter schools. It's not that we're doing something that larger organizations couldn't do. It's just that because we're small,
Mm-hmm.
we have the nimbleness to try something and tweak it until it works.
Yeah.
Whereas, the analogy I give is that, a typical school district is like a aircraft carrier. It
Mm-hmm.
can't shift and turn and pivot. And an aircraft carrier has a ton of wonderful things about it, but nimbleness isn't one of them.
Right.
We're like a tugboat, okay? We are able to kind of navigate the waters and shift and change as we need.
Yeah.
Do we have all the resources that an aircraft carrier may have? No, but we are able to innovate and cycle through ideas at a much faster rate. And really, the idea behind charter schools is not to compete with the traditional district public schools, but really to push the envelope of innovation and then publish those works or disseminate that information,
Right.
which can be used in the larger education community. And
Well,
that's the stance
you're
we've.
you're almost like the R&D department of a large company that has the sense and wherewithal to continue to be relevant, and you're doing it within the system. Uh, let's talk about that pivoting, Kapil, because obviously what just happened with the coronavirus impact on every aspect of everybody's lives, and the sort of the magnitude of that even being more amplified because of a
Yeah.
lack of preparedness by those who were in leadership positions. Not pointing fingers, I'm just saying the reality is, it hit us like a ton of bricks, and it affected everything. And then, everybody's basically now in shutdown. Everybody is in stay home, stay safe. And it's not even a local. I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine that I'm interviewing uh, at some point this weekend, but he's in Kuala Lumpur and he is in the hospitality industry. And we were just talking about how, some of us who have been at what we do for about 20 plus years, we've experienced impacts before. There was 91, 92, there was 2008. We've been through some of this stuff before. But what's fascinating about this one is it's not regional. It's not even national. It's global. So there's nowhere to, like, if somebody has a multinational organization and says, oh, well, one of our markets has basically been hit right now, but we'll see it through because there's other ones that are not. We don't have that luxury. Everything is interconnected, everything, which is good until something like this happens, and we're seeing the negative side of that. So let's talk about the pivoting, because your experience is an interesting one to me, is that you set this thing up, what, 5 years ago? Not even, like, right? And from the beginning, you did certain things that were out of maybe necessity, out of, resource allocation, whatever it is. Let's talk about that pivoting that you just had to go through. How extreme was the pivoting?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to remember is that I don't think this is lack of preparedness. This scenario wasn't even on our list of things that we should even credibly consider. Normally when schools are talking about their continuity programs, you're thinking about things like natural disasters like earthquakes and fires. You're thinking about active shooter type of situations. Really, this kind of school shutdown, it really didn't even occur to us or to anybody that this was a a real possibility.
Hmm.
Um, but I will, I think we've done a pretty good job of pivoting and really trying to adapt to what's hopefully a short-term new normal.
Right.
But our school, as I said earlier, is really focused on the individual growth or the personalized learning of each student.
Hmm.
And so even our on-campus program, it used a lot of technology. It used a lot of small group and individual instruction. And the school was really designed from the ground up to be like that. The other piece that added, to our ability to respond quickly was that we don't have a permanent facility. We're leasing a facility, for 5 years from the school district. And so we couldn't put a lot of on-premise uh, technology or solutions in place because we wanted to be nimble enough that if we were to move to another location, we would have the flexibility. So from the ground up, our entire school, all of our digital resources were all cloud-based. So we were able to really respond. And so that's everything from our email and website to our phone system, all of the different education tools that we use. The school doesn't have a single server. Everything's hosted. And so we were able to really quickly shift from hosted and everyone's accessing it at one location to hosted and people are accessing it all over the place.
So
So
that's fascinating. So what basically was driven by the fact that you were leasing, did not have a permanent location, you were not really able to invest in stuff that then would be easily transportable as you maybe get a permanent location. That what seemed at the time to be a limitation or a hindrance, in fact, caused you to have to structure yourself in such a manner that made you not only nimble, but you also made you transportable.
exactly,
Interesting.
exactly.
Interesting. And
So
then even that, I mean, even down to your phone systems, even down to, like you're saying, that you, it's amazing to me that there's no server, right? I
there's
mean,
nothing.
everything is cloud based. So okay, and what has that meant to you now? Like, how has that helped you with the pivoting? I mean, obviously, it has helped you, but could you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah. So what we did was we moved our spring break and we shut down for a week. Um, and everybody was off except for basically the administrators. So we had a couple of days to kind of look at what program we were delivering and how we were going to transition it. And then last week, Monday and Tuesday, we had professional development days for our teachers, and they basically took the framework that the administration laid out and put in the specifics as to what was going to happen when. Um, on Tuesday, we deployed all of our Chromebooks. So again, because we're a smaller school and we're a technology focused school, we had a Chromebook device already checked out to every single student in the school. They just had to come and pick them up. And so we set up an appointment system where we had one family at a time come to pick up the Chromebook.
Hmm.
We have an online community called Parent Square. That's kind of like our own little social media site.
Internal media, yeah, social
And
media, yeah.
so it already from day one, it allowed teachers to push out information to parents, text, pictures, videos. It also allows for signups and conference times. Parents are able to instant message with the teachers. And
Hmm.
these are all tools that we've had from the very first year. So they became much more relevant.
Right.
Um,
It
we did
wasn't,
the
it wasn't a luxury anymore. It was a fundamental foundational necessity to
exactly.
continue to flow. Yeah, I got it. I mean, it's really an interesting, I think, case study, if you will, for people that are watching, because I'm sure also that the relationships between the teachers and the parents, as more burden has been put on the parents now in the course of daily activity with their kids at home. I mean, you can speak of it also from your perspective as a parent, is that now the dynamic has shifted. I mean, it's more, I would think it's more of a need to be all on the same team for the benefit of the
Yes.
kid, from everything from discipline, continuity. You know, you're not dropping off the child at the school in the morning and now it's somebody else's responsibility to be disciplining them and making sure they're on track. That is now, you know, the parents are now the cafeteria staff, they're the recess monitors, they're the PE teachers, along with the fact that they are also, you know, it's no longer, did you do your homework? Okay, great, you can watch Netflix. Now it's 24/7, including you got to go to bed so that next morning you're actually going back to school. And then, you know, when do you have your breaks? So how has that been? How has the system helped with that? How have you noticed a different dynamic between the teachers and the parents?
Well, that is an evolving dynamic. We from day one have been a low homework school,
Okay.
so our families are not. They didn't have the
The burden?
experience of having to work with their kids after school every day. Um, so that has been interesting. What we rolled out. So we named our program OCASA in Casa. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm
OCASA
going to
at
put
home.
that picture up because it's also literally in your casa.
Exactly. That's
That's your daughter there,
that's
right?
my daughter, and that's her little workspace that we made for her.
Yeah.
Um, so what we did was we structured the program um, in a way to help support not only the students but the parents as well. So what we've done is we have a weekly check-in appointment with the parent and the student and the child's core teacher
Hmm.
or homeroom teacher, depending on what grade level they're in. And then that basically is a 20 to 30-minute weekly appointment where the teacher can kind of lay out the priorities for the week, kind of mentor the students and ask them how's it been going, what have the challenges been, maybe provide some instruction and, hey, I don't understand how this is happening, or I don't understand how that's happening. Um, that is really the foundation to help structure the week. The teachers put together a weekly list of assignments.
Hmm.
Everything is delivered electronically via Google Classroom. We do have staff that's still on campus, and so if parents need printed out copies of things, they can make an appointment to pick those up. So that's sort of the main parent communication piece. And then we have our instructional assistants. So at our school, the maximum class size is 32 kids, but we have 2 teachers in each classroom. So we have the lead teacher and an instructional assistant. And all the lead teachers are credentialed teachers. And in most cases, the instructional assistants are also credentialed teachers.
Hmm.
Um, the instructional assistants are doing tutoring appointments with the kids. So they can sign up and say, okay, I'm not understanding this language arts assignment.
Right.
Let me help you. And so this is what they were doing on campus. They were working with individual and small group
Right.
students to help them go through the material.
Well, it's also helpful to the parents because now they are thrown into that role in a way with the child being in that same environment with them, but there's also support for them through those people on your side that were basically also continue to do what they were doing in real life.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then most of our teachers are doing their morning meeting via video.
Hmm.
So they'll all get, the entire class will get online, say at 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, and then the teacher will help structure the day.
Hmm.
Um, we also have our on-campus program has an incredibly diverse set of activities. We have music, fine arts, computer science, Spanish, all kinds of projects and activities going on. Some of those things we haven't attempted to roll out online, but
Hmm.
those core specialty classes we
Yeah.
have. So our kids are getting music and art lessons 2 or 3 times a week, depending on their grade level. Same thing with engineering and computer science, 2 or 3 classes per week.
It's amazing.
Plus our Spanish teacher is delivering 2 or 3 Spanish lessons each week. So on any given day, the kids may have 2 to 3 to 4 appointments online for classes, either individual with the teacher or the tutoring with the IA or the specialty classes. Some of our teachers are also running workshops online. So like my daughter's math teacher is doing a weekly workshop. So that's in addition to all of these other things. We have an entire team of special education educators, and they are providing additional support to students with disabilities, just like they would do on campus. They're doing that via
I
the computer.
I gotta stop you for a minute. Okay, you do realize that all of this stuff that you're telling me is dizzying, right? I mean, it's just it's so encompassing and it's so multi-layered. It's dizzying, and I just want to just stop you for a minute and just remind everybody who's listening that this has been going on for a week. That's like a blink of an eye, okay? And the fact that you were, and I said this to you before, is that you literally had your dial set at about 5 or 6 maybe, and now you just kind of went, whoop, we're up to 7 or 8, and we've got a little room to go as well. You rolled out the OCASA and CASA program when?
Our first day was Wednesday. So
Wednesday.
We started on Monday. Monday and Tuesday was planning. We had our first session with kids on Wednesday. We've done Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
And how many people? How much percentage-wise of your student body is now already 3 days later enrolled in this program?
We have 98% of our students are enrolled in the program. So pretty much everybody is doing it. We're working with those families that haven't engaged yet. What do you think? What do you think that's about? Like, what is about that 10% that hasn't engaged yet? Well, I think it's some people have some technology challenges.
Okay.
So we're providing the Chromebook, and we've worked with Cox Communications to provide free internet for kids that are on free or reduced lunch. They're providing it for 30 days at no cost, and then they have a low-cost program for parents to continue going forward. So I think there's some technology issues.
Right.
Probably
equipment, age of equipment. I mean, bandwidth, and to your point, people that maybe have challenges. That kudos to you for partnering up with a provider and actually making sure that everybody has equal access. That's very admirable.
Well, that's at the foundation of our program.
Yeah.
I think another challenge could be language barriers. So we have some parents who their English proficiency is limited, and we're doing a lot of communication via email and Parent Square. And so fortunately we have staff at our school, our Spanish teacher and others who have been able to jump in on some of those communication with parents so that we can make sure that we're serving our entire population.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, I was just curious more than anything, and thanks for answering the question. It's, you're going to get there. I mean, to achieve 90%, engagement within 3 days of rolling out a program says a lot to the fact that you already have a lot of people that were up, kind of not conditioned, but leaning in familiarity and maybe comfort with the technology and using these platforms prior to this, so that the pivoting wasn't extreme or jarring. And then it makes perfect sense that you're going to have a little bit of structural or infrastructural issues, or maybe language that you have to accommodate. And knowing you, it's I'll check in with you by next Wednesday, and you're like, okay, we're at 100%.
Well, I think that
or is that Monday? I don't know. Is that your goal by Monday afternoon? You'll be done with 100%. I'm kidding.
Well, it'll be next week. I mean, there may be some who choose not to do this. This is a voluntary activity.
Yeah.
There may be some that choose not to do it, but I think the other part that you have to add into this is that it's really hard to get into our school. Not because so we're a public school, anybody can attend.
What's your student body number?
So we're at about 400 students,
Okay.
but we have the same number of students on the wait list to
Wow.
get into the school. So the way that this happens is we have to do a lottery every year
Yeah.
to see who can get in. So there's no admission criteria. We don't look at, there's no testing, or we don't look at any cumulative
Sure,
files
no
or anything
additional
ahead of time.
cost to make sure, because there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, I think, in some circles. There is no additional cost. This is a public school.
No, this is a completely free public school. There are no fees to attend. All of the materials and everything that the student needs for their
No
program.
criteria. It's literally a lottery, is what you're doing.
It's literally a lottery.
Yeah.
I mean, there are geographic restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
So kids that live within the Capistrano Unified School District
but
get
that's normal
first
for any
priority.
public. That's normal for any public system. I mean, yeah.
But we are able to do a lot of different things. So our kids go on 8 field trips per year, including overnights in 5th grade. We have guest speakers that come every week to our campus for assemblies with different kids. We have incredible projects. Our Facebook page, it's incredible. Go look at it and see some of the videos.
What's the Facebook
projects.
Page,
It's just facebook.com/OCASA charter. We're on all the social media platforms. So
it's the same as it's the same as the website that I've got going on, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
So like, for example, our last semester, we had a student who built a robotic, or a team of students who built a robotic xylophone. So they made using an Arduino, they made a robot with mallets, and they were able to program it to play music on a little kid xylophone. These are elementary and middle school kids.
Thank you. I was going to ask you to make sure that people understand that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So like the projects that happen at our school, these are not projects like when you and I were a kid. Our archetype project was, get a shoebox and make a diorama. Or my favorite was, when I was in middle school, we had to build a French castle. And so it was all individual. It was all done at home. And so, it was me and my dad in the garage with a big piece of plywood and styrofoam trying to make this French chateau. And then we brought it into school on the day that it was due. And I saw the project that my best friend did. And this is somebody who I talked to every single day, but we never talked about our castle project. I had this big, probably 4x4 plywood base with this castle and all the gardens and everything.
Well, knowing your family, and I didn't have the pleasure of meeting your dad, but hearing about your dad from your mom and you, I don't think you guys do anything half-assed. Excuse the French castle. But I think I can also imagine that a big part of why you're even reminiscing about this is just your relationship with your dad. And I can only imagine the hours and the time that it went into you guys sharing and doing that. So what happened? Yeah. What was the comparison?
So then when the day it was due, and my friend brought his was maybe a foot by 1 by 1 on a styrofoam, and he made his castle like when you go to see a model home and they've got just like little dots and things like that. That was his castle. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, it's not something I even considered. And my project,
I didn't know this was an option.
Exactly. My project maybe could have been better if, instead of trying to make it large, maybe I tried to he focused on sort of the contour of the land. And so he really contoured his styrofoam for that. But those were the old kind of projects where it was done individually, kind of a one and done deal.
You do see the parallel, don't you, Kapil? You see the parallel in that when you set up your school, you didn't build a big French castle. You focused, you see the parallels here?
Yeah.
That you focused on the things that were the contour of the land, the scalability and transportability of the castle. Because instead of using the full trunk of the car with the hatchback open to get the castle to the school, okay, or rent a truck to do it, you could just put it in the side passenger seat and just drive it over to another location. I mean, I think it's
Exactly.
fascinating that you're sharing this, and yet there's parallels that can be applied to life lessons that were maybe learned subconsciously or consciously that you then applied in how you basically built your school.
Well, and that's what we're trying to teach the kids is we're trying to have them explore as much as they can about all different kinds of topics
Yeah.
and try things. So we don't want our projects to be a one and done kind of thing. We explicitly ask them to plan, to set up milestones, to tinker, to do models ahead of time, and really tweak and learn that process and
Yeah.
collaborate. So we have all kinds of equipment and spaces at our campus to have the kids do the projects on campus.
Mhm.
And so what we end up with is projects that sometimes work and sometimes they don't work, which is fine.
That's
But what
part of
we're
the
trying to
learning. That's
teach them
part of
is
the
the
learning
process.
process. That's part of the
Exactly.
learning process. Anybody
We're
who's
trying
been
to
through
teach them
that.
the process.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not knocking your large castle, because if you're the kid that builds the large castle, or the kid that builds the small one by one, very detailed or more interpretive and expressive model, there's room for all of that. And the thing that's fascinating about this conversation is I mean, as you know, I went to school for an undergraduate in economics and a master's in marketing, and then ended up, going to school in 91 for another degree in interior design. And I refer always to that experience as being a case where the great thing about the school was not necessarily that it taught me technical drawings. The great thing about the school I went to, and I'll give a plug, it's Interior Designers Institute in Newport Beach, is that you were allowed to express yourself creatively, and you were allowed to find that voice. And because the world around you later will basically condition you to have to deliver on goals and objectives. But if you don't build that muscle at that level, at the school level, like you guys are doing right now with your students, you really don't know what your voice is. You are just basically
Exactly.
mechanically going through the steps. And that is, from where I am sitting today, that is a loss, because you don't know what people have to give, and they don't know what they have to give and contribute until you put them in a situation that is a little bit fluid, a little bit open, more rounded, if you will, is the person that you come out with from that experience. And so you're doing it at this level. I can only imagine, as the students that you have today move on to other things, how crucial what you are building and what you are seeding right now in them is going to be, and how well it will serve them in their life.
Yeah, it's really what we're building at the K-8 level is we're really helping the kids understand themselves and understand what are their likes, what are their dislikes, what are their aptitudes, and where do they need to supplement or focus on areas, either by teaming up with another student to help
Mhm.
who has a different strength, or building those strengths for themselves. Now, as we launch our second school, OCASA College Prep, this school now takes that conversation to the next level, where uh, really we're starting to focus on how do you take that base understanding of self
Yeah.
and now apply it to prepare yourself for college or other post
It's
school
interesting. It's
activities.
interesting that you use the word understanding of self versus learning of self, because it's much more accurate. Actually, you're turning the person inwards to understand what their offerings are, what they have, what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, how to strengthen things that maybe are weak. But you're not teaching. You're teaching them about themselves and understanding themselves. You're not learning them skills necessarily. It's interesting. You've
Correct.
said that word twice, and I think it's actually very accurate. How many self-help books later on in life basically people are sold? How many coaching sessions do you go to for the simple purpose of understanding yourself? And
Exactly.
that's exactly what you're doing at this level. Let's talk a little bit about this next chapter, because again, it's very fascinating that you would be already in that growth spurt. And how has it been receptiveness wise at this district this time around versus maybe last time around?
Yeah, so pretty much from day one, um, parents at the K-8 OCASA were asking, well, what happens after 8th grade? Where do my kids go? And you know, you have taught them in a different way. Are they going to be successful when they go to a traditional high school?
Hmm.
So we have had one class of 8th grade students leave us and go to high school. Some of them went to charter high schools. Our closest charter high school is in Santa Ana. Um, some of them went to private schools, and many of them went to our comprehensive district high schools.
Hmm.
And of course, you know, we've kept in touch, and the feedback that we've gotten from all of the kids that have gone to these different places is that our K-8 program was more rigorous, and prepared them for high school life far better than their peers at the high school.
Hmm.
And it's not it's not because our program is necessarily more academically challenging,
Yeah.
but it's because we expected them to be able to organize their time and make their priorities, and we gave them options as to when do you work on what. And this is really very real world application type of thing, that when you then go on into high school and you have 5 or 6 different teachers that don't have their syllabus lined up, so you may have, you know, a paper due in 2 classes on the same day, or you know, a paper and a test on the same day, and
Right.
you as a student have to organize yourself. um, I think our school really has been preparing kids for that. What
Well,
we do
their
starting,
expectations because of their experience at your school is now at a level where they are evaluating other things with that as a benchmark, and maybe they're seeing things that are different, but they're also maybe seeing things where they're not having the same discipline and structure that they're used to, which
right,
is world conditions. But yeah, I get why the feedback you're getting is the way it is, and it's valuable.
right. So, you know, we were thinking about how do we grow. Um, Traditionally, what charter school organizations do is they take their one school and they go through a process called replication, where they
Hmm.
basically find another community and they take the same school and they make another campus in another location. Um, you know, I think the DNA of our organization is very community based, just
Yeah.
because of how we started.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a lot of interest to take our school and say replicate it in Anaheim, or take it to San Diego or something like that. What our parents wanted was a deeper involvement and deeper commitment into the community.
Hmm.
So that's why we decided that, okay, we're going to open a second school and we're going to add more grades so that you could go to OCASA from kindergarten through 12th grade. Um, we have a unique partnership with an organization called Summit Learning, and they run their own schools, but then they also provide a learning management system. So starting in 6th grade, um, all of our materials are available online.
Hmm.
And so what it allows the teacher who's still doing direct instruction and workshops and whatever, it allows them to highly personalize the work for each student. They can make different assignments to every single student in their class. They don't, they make them in groups, but they technically could. And so it really pushes that envelope from personalizing the the class in elementary school, and figuring out which small groups kids are going to be in, and now takes it to the next level where you can keep the level of rigor appropriate to every student while hitting those standards that we have to hit in each class and each grade level. So what it does, what the overall program does, is it really keeps the pace and the scale of growth down to what each individual student needs. And the data about our program supports this. If you go and look at, there's a website called the California School Dashboard, and every single public school is rated on that. It's a multifactorial rating. Go and look up Orange County Academy of Sciences and Arts on there, and see what are our kids doing in math? What are they doing in language arts? What are they doing on local factors like social emotional growth and engagement? How are they doing on attendance? You'll see that our school, the growth metrics are off the charts. They're one of, if not the highest growth in the entire state of California. And that's because we don't take the approach of, we just have to get the kids over the line of minimum standards.
Mm-hmm.
Our metric is mastery. So we have to get the kids not only over that minimum line, but we have to get them to master the material. And it looks different for every kid how to master it. And the enrichment opportunities and the ability to personalize what we're doing, it's really reflected in our test scores. So, kids are like, one of our board members says, kids are like amoebas. They have these growth areas where they, you probably have seen this, with little kids, they get obsessed with dinosaurs or something, and they learn everything that they can about dinosaurs. And then they kind of plateau in that area. And then there's a new interest that sparks. Mm-hmm. And so you take two kids, they're not the same. They don't have the same interests. They don't have the same foundational knowledge. So why are you trying to teach them as if they're all the same?
Because that's how our society is. It permeates into everything. If I can standardize it and I can put it in a neat little box, and I have lack of complexity in it, I can roll it out in volume. That is the mistake of all mistakes, because what price you pay for that, regardless what it is, and what the interior design business that I do, I had this conversation yesterday, literally, about how, doing what you do for the last 20 years should be your first sign that you got a problem, because you are not continuing to look for better ways or different ways and learning from those, whether you implement them or not in the long run, to try to standardize everything and put it in a neat little box. I mean, you and I have had this conversation just in terms of our background. Like, if I tell somebody I'm born in Baghdad, raised in Abu Dhabi, grew up in Kuwait, went to school in Switzerland, the minute I say that, the assumption is completely erroneous, because I'm also Christian, Greek Orthodox, and Catholic, and I happen to look Italian, and I basically have spoken nothing but English and Arabic from day one. I can never, ever tell you not having a dual language, because that's just the way it was. To put that in front of somebody that is wanting a very simplified, neat little box I can put on a shelf, it challenges your whole reality. And yet, if you don't do that, you are killing that diversity that is really the true strength. What you're doing in your program is you are allowing for the diversity of the personalities, the strengths, the nuances that make every one of those children unique in their own right. And you're trying to actually bring it up to the surface by having them understand what that is for themselves. That is exactly a huge, huge gift that you are gifting them and their parents and society as a whole. And the only question I have for you is, okay, you got 400 people right now enrolled. You got 400 people on waiting lists. You may have found out that by doing it online, you have maybe expanded beyond your physical walls of your classroom. Fine. But now you're going to do this upper level charter school. I'm assuming that 90% of the 400 people that you already have are moving on into that. So are you basically building another charter school that is already going to have a big, huge waiting list? Or what are you doing in terms of capacity, knowing what you know today? for that next evolution and growth?
Yeah, we're the OCASA College Prep, the 612 school. It will open full. Um, it will. There may be a wait list. I'm not so certain about that. Um, we have a good partnership with the Capistrano Unified School District. They're providing us with facilities for both schools. Um, they don't have empty facilities, so it's not like they can accommodate all of the growth and demand that we have. But we're very appreciative for what they've provided to us. They did approve the college prep school at the local level,
I think
7-0.
you told me 7-0, right? I
Yeah,
mean, compared to
7-0.
I can't make a decision a few years ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so really the capacity is limited by the physical space that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So, our long-term goal is to have our own campus. But as you know, real estate is very tight in South Orange County, and
Right.
we have all of our cities are master planned cities, from a zoning perspective and things like that. And when our zoning laws were enacted, there was no idea of a charter school. It was, okay, if there's a school facility, then that's the property owned by the school district. So it's been challenging.
And those changes at that level are slow moving. I mean, there's a lot of systems in place, bureaucracies in place. It's very slow moving in that case. But the thing about you too is you're very patient. I mean, you have achieved quite a bit in terms of this particular effort in a very short period of time. But it also requires a certain patience, and you've said it multiple times here. This is not a competitive situation. This is all in the best interest of the kids through a public school system by providing alternatives. It's you're going to be full before you open. I mean, I you already know this. Let's talk about this opportunity that is maybe it's sort of a unexpected byproduct of this crisis that we're dealing with, about this sort of distance learning. Because you told me something, and I'm going to let you tell the listeners. You told me something that was actually ironic and fascinating, where we started at the beginning of this year as a state. You want to share that with people?
Yeah. So last September, the governor of California signed 63 new laws that impact charter schools. One of them was called AB 1505, and that was like sort of the largest one. And it was a very expensive, both from capital and politicians, trying, giving and taking. There was a lot of negotiation. It was led by the California Charter Schools Association. We have two charter school associations in California. One is California Charter Schools Association, and the other one is the Charter School Development Center. And both of them had a slightly different take, but really the legislative sessions were championed on the charter school side by the Charter School Association with support from CSDC. But the bottom line, there was sweeping changes to charter schools. And where we ended up was that 60-day clock that I told you about extended now to 90 days.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was they put a 2-year moratorium on opening new online charter schools or distance-based charter
learning,
schools.
Yeah.
So the way the ed code is written, there's two categories of schools, and there's no hybrid. So there's classroom-based, which is what our schools are, and there's non-classroom based. And there are a number of non-classroom based schools across the state.
Mm-hmm.
They vary in quality,
Mm-hmm.
just like the classroom-based schools vary in quality.
Mm-hmm.
But because the non-classroom-based schools are not limited by the physical space, they tend to be much larger.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked earlier about being this nimble tugboat. Well, there are non-classroom based charter schools that are larger than many school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And so they then start to lose some of that nimbleness. And so I'm not exactly sure all of the rationale, but the final bill that was enacted said for 2 years, we're not doing any more non-classroom based schools. And we're going to evaluate and see what makes them work and what makes them not work. But now here we are. So that went into effect on January 1. And here we are. Not only are there more non-classroom based schools ostensibly, but almost 100% of the kids in the state are going to non-classroom schools. So I don't know that that's going to impact the legislation because it's already been passed and signed. But I think you're going to see a lot more interest in maybe not a full-time distance-based program, but definitely there needs to be a category of sort of a hybrid school. So like in our environment, there are certain things that we can do distance-based, but certainly doing projects and collaborating and using 3D printers and art supplies and cooking and all the other things that we do, you can't do that really distance-based consistently. You know, it
No,
depends on.
Neither one at where we are in the world, or where we are in terms of technology, where we are in terms of societal development. I think neither one of those programs, going back to the thing I was saying about like the way we've been doing things for 20 years does not mean that we should continue. And unfortunately, in many cases, it's because there's actually gatekeepers and guards on certain points that are critical, that are just, that's the comfort space that they're in. And until maybe that changes or there's an openness, we are just kind of biding our time till we get there. But where we're at today, neither an all classroom situation or an all online, because in the all online, you lose also that social component, the one-on-one in real life. I mean, anybody who's spent more than like a split second of existence on social media realizes that we may be very connected, or sorry, in touch, but the depth of connection is in a negative marginal rate of return, basically, over time, because you get isolated. And now a lot of people are feeling this. They're feeling it because now they don't have the balance anymore. They don't have the outside of their home life and the online life. Everything is happening on Zoom, and you don't have the other side to kind of balance it out. So with the school idea here, yes, I think a hybrid is going to end up being the result of this. To what level and scale, that's going to be a decision and a conversation at every school district, separate from the other. But I think where you're at, and I said this to you before we got on the air, I think you're going to be a very busy man, because accidentally or intentionally, what you have built is a system that actually works and is, to be, if I may, I would guess also efficient in terms of cost, in terms of rollout. You know, it's using technology the way as a tool versus being a slave to the technology or adapting it just to adapt it. You're using it effectively. And I think there's a lot to be said about this case study of what you have done at OCASA, and now expanding it to where it's more encompassing in terms of levels of education. I think we both have friends that we know at the district level. I think you're going to get your phone is going to be ringing, my friend, because there's going to be a desire to learn from this. And I said it or it was shared with me on an interview with the guy who's the director of the Center of Leadership from Cal State Fullerton earlier this week. There's a certain humility in leadership. There's a certain allowing people to understand themselves, whether they be district or student. There's a certain humility in leading, in proper leadership, and you have that in spades. So I think you need. Yeah, no, I'm not blowing smoke, my friend. I know you long enough, and you just, anybody who's been listening to this will see the tenure and tone of your voice. The school is a success. Kudos to you and everybody who was involved in the charter. I really look forward to seeing what happens with your expanded scope and classrooms. I've told you if there's any need for any physical facility stuff, you let me know, because this is a really exciting success story in South County, and it affects everybody, whether you are currently involved in it, having your kids enrolled in it, or you are basically watching it. Because at the end, what you have done here will have positive impacts throughout the whole district. So, pencil out some time, because you're going to be busy.
Well, and I think, going back to what you said earlier, it's not about people learning from us, but it's about the collaboration and the dialogue. And we're very open to having that collaboration and dialogue with anybody. Our goal is not world domination. Our goal is to do something good for kids in our neck of the woods, and then have others come and maybe take pieces and parts of what we're doing as it applies to their own situation, and really build that relationship with the students and build that relationship with the teachers to benefit the kids. And we're actually very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Our local school district is very rich. They're very innovative. They have a lot of different opportunities. So while it's difficult to get into our school, there definitely are wonderful things happening at all of the different district school sites. There are other charters as well. And our hope is that we really build a professional community of educators, both district and charter, and maybe even collaborating with private schools.
Well, we have great
to help the kids.
We have great colleges and community colleges in the system. I mean, again, just to emphasize, none of this conversation is about pointing any kind of comparison or fingers at anybody. This is just sharing a success story. And it's almost a canned adage, but the saying, it says a rising tide raises all boats. We started off with the aircraft carrier and the tugboat, and here we are ending with the rising tide, raising all boats. It's true, and I think it holds true very much in this case. So I appreciate you taking the time to share this with me and us, and I really look forward to having you on again to share the development of what's going on with the expansion. I will probably try to check in with you at the end of this week, because again, this is an evolving story as far as how the rollout is affecting parents, how it's affecting educators. And so we've had a great week of pivoting, in most cases actually, across multiple industries. So it'll be interesting to see as we settle into this, whether our initial engagement and ingenuity and innovation continues, or do we settle into sort of a comfort level of this is it, when we can maybe do better. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting evolving story to check in with you next week and see. And for everybody that is watching, gentleman on my split screen here is Kapil Mathur, who's a friend, an educator, a client, to be candid as well. And go ahead and give people, Kapil, I mean, I'm going to put it up, but tell them how they can find out more information and so forth.
Yeah, so you can go to our website, ocasacharter.org, and see some basic information about our school. We are actively engaged in social media, so that's another good place to learn about our school. If you're interested in applying, you can click on the admissions link on our website. All of our application process is all electronic, so you can do it all from your home without having to come in. Our open enrollment period for this next school year is closed, but we're still accepting applications. And whenever we do our lottery, all of the applications that come after the open enrollment period, they automatically go on the wait list. So you definitely have a shot of getting into the school if that's where you want to go. It's a great little place, and we love it. My daughter goes there, obviously, and she loves it.
Yeah, and find out. Go ahead, and also find out. I mean, about this new program that Kapil instigated or instituted about 3-4 days ago. The OCASA in CASA. That's another layer to their offering. So again, the OCASA in CASA program at the OCASAcharter.org is the website. OCASA Charter is also the name of the group on Facebook, right?
Yes.
So again, thanks so much, Kapil, for spending this time with me. I appreciate you sharing your coffee and your knowledge with us all. And I wish you continuing luck, my friend. I will be checking in with you next week to see how things are going. Have a great
Sounds
weekend.
good. Thanks a lot, Rod. Appreciate it.